I'm Natasha Kirchek, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, low water levels in the Sea of Galilee are spelling out disaster in Israel. The Israeli army has just revealed the last orders of the IDF Chief of Staff from the end of the Six-Day War, and we'll reveal the shocking amount of money that Israel's Wonder Woman is raking into box offices. Stay tuned for the latest news in Israel. It's been 2 days since the horrifying terror attack in London that left 7 dead, but the Israeli Prime Minister is still speaking out to comfort the British and send a resolute message to terrorists.
In recent hours, another terrible attack was launched on innocent people in the heart of London. We condemn it. We send our condolences to the British people, and we pledge our commitment to fight this scourge that knows no bounds.
On Saturday night, Islamic terrorists in London killed 7 people in the London Bridge area. The attackers began by driving a van into pedestrians on the bridge and then jumping out to launch a stabbing spree. Over 45 people were injured in the terrifying incident. The Israeli Prime Minister is on a diplomatic tour in Liberia, but he still took the time to condemn the atrocity.
These terrorists worship death. They murder indiscriminately, but they will not frighten us. They will not terrorize us. They will only harden our resolve to defeat them. And together here in Africa, in the Middle East, and Europe, everywhere, together we will defeat them faster. But our goal here is not merely to join forces to fight the bad, but to work together to advance the good.
Liberia has had its own experience with political violence. Former warlord Charles Taylor shelled civilian targets during the 2003 civil war that led to his ousting. With the United Kingdom's general election just a few days away, the fate of the United Kingdom is arguably more at risk now than ever. Incumbent Prime Minister Theresa May and the UK Labour Party's Jeremy Corbyn are at the forefront of the election, and there are many different directions that the country could take. Here to discuss this further are former Deputy Foreign Minister and Israeli Ambassador to the United States, Danny Ayalon, and former Ambassador to New Zealand, Yosef Livne. Thank you both so much for joining us.
Pleasure, Natasha.
So let's begin by talking a little bit about the similarities and differences between Theresa May and Jeremy Corbyn, and how those differences and or similarities will actually impact Israel.
I think that there are very distinct differences between the two candidates. Certainly with reference to Israel, I think that Corbyn is more identified with the left wing of the Labour Party, while Theresa May is probably center-right of the Conservative Party. And their positions on issues which are of interest and concern to us are certainly different. Corbyn once defined people from Hezbollah and Hamas as his friends. Theresa May has a different outlook altogether.
Right. So, and I would like to talk, obviously, about some of the statements that we heard from Jeremy Corbyn. But, you know, Ambassador Ayalon, what is your take on who is better for Israel?
Well, there is no doubt in my mind that Theresa May is much better, not just for Israel. I think for the British people itself, for the international community as a whole. I think that Corbyn has proven himself to be not only lack of experience. I mean, he's been an MP and he never had an executive position, but also in his thinking, he's pretty much on the verge of being an anarchist. And in that respect, I think that certainly when it comes to Israel, but not just to Israel, I think it is going to be very, very bad and will not be appreciated.
You know, we've seen these recent attacks on British soil in Manchester, now in London, yet we're still seeing growing support for Corbyn's Labour Party, which historically does have these pro-Hamas and pro-Hezbollah attitudes. Why is this increasing?
Well, I think the main reason is a demographic reason. I think in many of the districts, the constituencies have a growing Islamic population on the one hand, And secondly, I'm not sure that there is a real understanding yet about the danger of radical Islam, and that they all come from the same root, whether it's Al-Qaeda or ISIS or Hezbollah or Hamas, they all come from the same root, and I'm not sure that this has really dawned on the people of Europe yet.
I think that another issue, besides the terrorist aspect, which became much more salient over the last 2 weeks, I think that, and we've heard that several times from different sources, the fact that the British people are probably fed up with elections. It's the third campaign in 2 years. They had the Brexit, they had previously another election campaign, and some observers say that the tendency to say at least that people would vote for Labour comes from a different perspective. We've had enough elections, so let's, but I think it's probably safe to assume that Theresa May will stand to gain.
So we think that Theresa May is going to win. Is that the consensus here? I mean, how do you think the Israeli government is feeling about this, in the sense that is there somebody that anybody is sure is going to win here?
Well, her policies, on security vis-a-vis the terrorists is much more, let's say, viable than Corbyn's. In that sense, I believe that most of the European leaders, certainly Trump, would like to see Theresa May winning. I'm sure Bibi Netanyahu and our government as well. And also, if it's interesting to know that from the perspective of the Jewish community in London, almost as one, they are against Corbyn, which also has been accused of anti-Semitism.
Well, I think we're just going to have to wait and see what takes place. And, we're all wishing the best for the people of the United Kingdom following these horrific attacks. Thank you so much for joining us, ambassadors.
Thank you.
All right, tensions are heating up in Jerusalem's holy basin as the Muslim holy month of Ramadan enters its second week. And now 5 members of a Hamas-linked terror group have been arrested for planning to carry out attacks on the Temple Mount. Over the past few months, the Shin Bet Security Service has been carrying out an operation against the Jerusalem-based terror group. Members of the Al-Shabaab Al-Aqsa group were reportedly stocking weapons at the Temple Mount and inciting violence in order to deter visitors. The holy site is the location of the destroyed Jewish First and Second Temples, and it's the holiest site in Judaism. It's also home to the Al-Aqsa Mosque, Islam's third holiest site. Under the current status quo, Jews are banned from praying on the Temple Mount, while during Ramadan, thousands of Muslim pilgrims fill the space. And a Muslim cleric is telling his Al-Aqsa audience that Jews are the masters of the world and its corruptors. Sheikh Mohammed Ayed told his audience that Jews cause all of the killing, all of the slaughter, and the destruction everywhere. For Israeli security forces hoping to keep the peace during Ramadan, Ayed's hateful rhetoric is a serious issue. It's a difficult time for Hamas, especially now that their sponsor Qatar has just been kicked out of the Sunni Arab military coalition led by Saudi Arabia and Egypt. U.S. President Donald Trump called them a terrorist organization, and now Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas is cutting off their subsidy payments to imprisoned and released terrorists. Abbas is taking heat from Israel and America over the monthly payments the Palestinian Authority shells out to convicted terrorists, which Palestinians have defended as a form of welfare. But Gaza officials are saying that dozens of Hamas terrorists have not received their subsidies. Abbas has been reluctant to stop the payments in the past since they're supported by the vast majority of Palestinians. According to a Hamas-linked prisoner advocacy group, the prisoners went to their banks and found no salaries in their accounts. This, however, does not mean that Abbas has stopped subsidizing terrorists. Non-Hamas-linked terrorists are still receiving payments. In other Hamas news, the new leader of the terror organization in the Gaza Strip has traveled to Cairo to meet with Egyptian security officials. Yahya Sinwar's visit to Egypt represents the first high-level meeting between the de facto government of Gaza and the neighboring country in months. Under President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, Egypt has taken a hard line towards Hamas, a terror group that Sisi sees as essentially an offshoot of Egypt's Muslim Brotherhood. According to a Hamas spokesman, Sinwar and his delegation will push for the opening of the Rafah border crossing between Egypt and Gaza. They intend to discuss the humanitarian situation in Gaza resulting from the Egyptian and Israeli blockades. Hamas has been making conciliatory gestures toward Egypt, and last month it dropped its association with the Muslim Brotherhood, claiming to be a Palestinian movement in a shift away from a pan-Islamic stance. If Jesus were to walk across the Galilee now, he might have an easier time, but it's not necessarily for a good reason. Since February, the Galilee, known in Israel as the Kinneret, has been at its lowest level in a century. The body of water received around 10% of its average rainfall this year. A spokesman for the Israel Water Authority says this is the first time in 97 years that the Galilee has lost water, and it's causing major ecological problems across Israel. The Galilee is a source of the lower Jordan River, which is flowing far below its seasonal average of 7 cubic meters a second. And while Israel gets most of its water from coastal desalination plants, it still relies on the Kinneret for agriculture. Beyond that, the lake is a source for the Dead Sea, which has shrunk drastically over the last few decades, resulting in the closure of beaches and more ecological damage. Israel has an agreement to send millions of cubic meters of water to the Dead Sea, but with the Kinneret struggling, it's unclear if they'll be able to meet their commitments. New York City's Fifth Avenue played host yesterday to roughly 40,000 people from over 250 organizations, all for the annual Celebrate Israel or Israel Day parade. ILTV's Ron Jacobson had the opportunity to attend the parade this year, and he sent us the scoop.
Every first Sunday in June, New York shows its love to the state of Israel with the Israel Parade, closing down Fifth Avenue, 40,000 marches, and over 300,000 people on the sidelines. That's real love.
Fifth Avenue in New York City was a sight to see, and it was all because of the 2017 Israel Parade. Religious, secular, gay, straight, old, young, you name it. Almost every Israel supporter in the city was there to celebrate the country, but let's just say that two very real camels stole the show. The JCRC is responsible for putting the parade together every year, and Michael Miller is its chief executive officer.
The enthusiasm on the avenue is just unbelievable. And every year I look forward to it with all of the challenges that a big parade like this poses. This is really something that makes you feel proud to be Jewish and proud to be a supporter of Israel.
Ambassador Dani Dayan serves as Consul General of the State of Israel in New York, and he was almost speechless because of the love he felt in the city.
It's incredible. I am still in my first year in New York, so everything is my first. And I was looking forward for this day since I arrived here, and it didn't disappoint me by one bit.
Over at Midtown's Dream Hotel, ILTV had the chance to simultaneously attend the launch of the new website 4IL and app ActIL, which is working to combat the boycott, divestments, and sanctions movement against Israel.
I think it's not only about the Jewish communities. I think that you will find here many people from everywhere that feels that they support Israel, and then they want to show the world that they support Israel.
The Celebrate Israel parade actually began all the way back in 1965 as an impromptu walk. It wasn't until later that it became an annual event to celebrate the nation, rain or shine. And given that this June marks the 50th anniversary of the reunification of Jerusalem, it was no wonder that Jerusalem was one of the biggest themes of the event, and that Jerusalem Mayor Nir Barakat was one of the stars of the evening.
Well, today I marched the streets of New York with Mayor de Blasio, and a few hundreds of thousands of people that participated either in the march or spectators, and the love and the warm hug I and we received, Israel in general, and Jerusalem specifically, is second to none. I think everyone here in the United States recognizes and appreciates that we cherish each other, Israel, United States, Israel, and respect for the holy city of Jerusalem.
And so the 53rd annual Israel Parade and the inaugural Shimon Peres Day in New York have come to an end, leaving behind a trail of love for the state of Israel.
One of the top issues facing us on Earth is the world food shortage. Many of our resources go to feeding a small percentage of the planet, and we're now even seeing global fish populations dropping as well. Well, one Israeli firm is looking to overcome major challenges in the fish farming sector to help impoverished nations better access important and inexpensive sources of protein. Joining me in the studio now is Igal Magen, the CTO of Bioefficiency, to tell us more about their recirculating aquaculture systems. Now, that is a long title. Tell us about this system and how it works and how it's different from what exists right now on the market.
Right. As you described, the world shortage of fish is actually increasing. And the only way to meet this growing demand is by aquaculture. The thing is that aquaculture need to upgrade the facilities,
right,
meaning recycle the water. The majority of the aquaculture is being done in extensive and intensive ponds using large amount of water that enable us to have a carrying capacity in certain amount.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is to go into developing countries where 90% of the world production is being done, upgrade the existing facilities, and actually converting them from a flow-through unit into a recirculating system. Now, the differences between what we did and the others is actually we simplify the process, make it a plug-and-play, so you don't need to invest in the local infrastructure. You just actually install it right away as a plug-and-play in the existing facilities without major investment. So,
wow,
so basically it's easy plug-and-play unit that can be actually addressed in different methods.
No, this is very interesting. Bioefficiency, I mean, first of all, I'd kind of like to understand how you came up with the idea. I mean, how Bioefficiency decided to kind of go down this path more specifically.
My partner Kobe and I actually been working the industry for about 20 years. And I've been working along many years in developing countries, and so actually that the problems of water shortage and fish issues are actually it's all over the world. It's the same. And from doing that, we try to find out, all right, let's find a simple solution that will be addressed to developing countries, because the majority of the big firms addressing the high-value species like the salmons in Norway and in Chile. But funny it is that the majority of the production is being done in China, Indonesia, and Southeast Asia, or in Africa. And they don't have the funds to have those sophisticated technology.
Mm-hmm.
So we needed to find a way to simplify it so it would be accessible for farmers all over the world. And that's exactly what we did.
Right, and I mean, this is very important also for the people on the ground, right? I mean, because fish are a very important source of protein, and to be able to kind of enhance the systems that are already existing in these countries is very important. Now, tell us kind of a little bit about some of the results from the product that you've created and introduced to the market.
Right. Basically, we have several installations in Israel, and for us, Israel is a big R&D area. Here you see some farms around the coast that are using a flow-through system, and the idea is to take those systems and install it and to recycle the water.
So Israel's a testing ground right now, and what are we seeing? How is the health of the fish that are being,
The idea fish are very easy animal to grow if you give them good water quality. And like you see here, oxygenation and removing the toxic nutrient that they have in the water, the fish will grow. So the idea is to supply what they need in recycling the water. So we have several installations in Israel, in few of the kibbutzim in the Bat-Shan Valley. That 70% of Israel of the fish is being produced in the Bat-Shan Valley.
Wow.
And we have several installations in the world, including China. I think we sell several units to China, Indonesia.
So the system is already being implemented in other countries as well.
Yeah,
not just
definitely.
Here in Israel.
This is the unit actually is implemented in several countries, as I said, from China, Indonesia, Bangladesh, India.
Well, I mean, it seems like you have definitely introduced a product to the market that is going to change a lot of lives and hopefully help us with the world food shortage that we're seeing. So thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you very much.
It's been a big week for Warner Brothers and Israel since the blockbuster hit Wonder Woman has raked in over $100 million in American box office sales this weekend. ILTV's Aaron Porras is back with a scoop. Aaron, I know that you love Gal Gadot, so this is very exciting for you as well.
I mean, love is a pretty strong word. I would say more like constantly dream about.
Yeah, I think everybody dreams about Gal Gadot a little bit. We all watch her trailer on repeat in the ILTV offices, but this is really exciting because, you know, for women like myself, this is a first time that we're seeing a female star as the heroine of such a major film, and not only is it a female, but it is an Israeli female.
True, and I mean the story is equally amazing. You know, to see this, you know, bad
power.
woman.
What is she? She's from the Amazon, right? The
so she's an Amazonian princess.
Right.
Her name is Diana. She's from Themyscira, an island, island nation, and she's just absolutely. It's an amazing film. I don't want to go into it too much. I don't want to ruin the story for those who don't know it. But it is both a critical and a financial hit at the box office, as you said. You know, they have a 93% rating on Rotten Tomatoes as of this reading.
So after our audience finishes watching this, and it's time to head to the cinema to see this, because I know I have to go and see Wonder Woman.
And as you said about the female, I want to touch on that. With a 52% female audience, which is pretty new for, you know, the superhero genre.
Really? That's an interesting fact.
Warner executives are saying it's breaking a glass ceiling, as they say, for female director Patty Jenkins. So it's pretty amazing.
It's breaking a glass ceiling for a lot of people. A lot of people. Well, thank you so much for coming in and telling us about this. And now let's check out your report.
Jenkins now has the most successful opening weekend of any female director ever, by around 20 million. Wonder Woman is single-handedly saving summer box office numbers as well. A media analyst says the summer movie season was down by 9% before this weekend, and now that number has been halved. For Warner and DC Comics, who have been trying to match the success of Marvel's cinematic universe acclaimed Captain America and Iron Man movies, Wonder Woman's warm critical reception couldn't come at a better time. While Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice and Suicide Squad both did well at the box office, their 27% and 25% ratings on Rotten Tomatoes are a far cry from Wonder Woman's stellar numbers.
Today marks the 50th anniversary of Israel's stunning victory in the Six-Day War, and on Saturday, the IDF spokesperson's unit published IDF Chief of Staff Yitzhak Rabin's final orders of the 1967 war. ILTV's Max Keisler is here with the story. Max, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, first of all, it's striking just how much autonomy these IDF generals had back then. And Rabin almost alludes to this, that the decision to take Jerusalem, that was made by the generals. The government didn't even know about it. And when they took Jerusalem, the mood here was just exuberant. I'd say almost messianic. Wow. And you have to consider that the Israeli government had planned for thousands of civilian casualties. There's this park in Tel Aviv that even turned into a temporary gravesite, and none of that was necessary. Instead, we just had this huge victory.
Wow. Well, let's check out your report.
The tone of the orders is essentially triumphant. In an allusion to the recently uncovered Dead Sea Scrolls, Rabin writes, "Now, with the ceasefire, the war of the Sons of Light has ended with those who tried to bring darkness upon us." The Israel Defense Force, by land, sea, and air, have crushed the armies of 4 Arab states. Rabin gave these orders at the Western Wall. He was one of the first Jews there in decades, and not since King Antigonus Mattityahu was killed by the Romans in 37 BCE had Jerusalem been under Jewish sovereignty. As the commander of Haganah troops in Jerusalem during the 1948 war, Rabin fought firsthand in the failed struggle to keep the city 2 decades earlier. The late general and prime minister's orders will be displayed beginning on Sunday at the Rabin Center in Tel Aviv.
The Hebrew word of the day is brought to you by IDC Summer Ulpan, open to everyone.
And now for our Hebrew word of the day. Exceeding all expectations is something Israelis tend to enjoy doing, or at least that's how we like to look at it. So today's word is tzipia, meaning expectation. From having the most startups per capita to breaking box office records, there are few tzipiot or expectations that Israelis don't try to exceed. Israelis don't have a monopoly on moving beyond a tzipia, though. They just serve as a great reminder that you can move beyond them. So always keep in mind that oftentimes the hardest tzipia to exceed is imposed by you yourself, and believe in yourself. Make those tzipiot as high as you can and reach for the stars. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight should be partly cloudy with a low of 68 or 20 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow will be slightly warmer with fair weather and a high of 86 or 30 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.55 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for watching.